And we are live here with Irish Mickey Doyle and Tim Keenan, the author of the new book. And what's the name of the book, guys?
Everyone Loves Mickey, The Life and Times of Irish Mickey Doyle.
Great. And you guys said it just came out?
Days ago. I mean, I self-published it on Sunday, and it came out like Tuesday.
Cool. That's pretty exciting. And how long was the process in getting this thing out there?
Go ahead, Mickey.
I was just going to say, Tim approached me about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And the crazy thing, when he approached me shortly thereafter, he had a heart attack and he didn't know if he was going to live or not. And he managed to pull through, and we did a lot of notes, a lot of things I wrote down, and he processed everything, and we had some in-face meetings, and he did a great job. I give him a lot of credit. He busted his rear end to make this happen, and it finally happened, and we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I wasn't near death at any time. I just want to make that clear. But no, okay. Mickey and I actually, we met about maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago at a funeral of another wrestler, and then got to be Facebook friends, and and we're talking, and ended up on the phone one day, and I said, "Hey, Mickey, did you ever think?" Because he was telling me stories that were like fascinating. Because when I grew up watching Mickey wrestle when he just started,
yeah,
and he wasn't terribly successful in his first year in Detroit, and then he left, and you didn't hear from him again. But then we had lots of success, especially in Alabama, shortly after he left Detroit. So it was interesting to me to hear his stories, and so I thought maybe somebody else would be interested too. And so I asked him if he'd ever wanted to write a book, and he was like, "No, I had never thought of it." I go, "Well, let's do it." And he's like, all in. So it took a while. I mean, it's a process. You got to sit down and do interviews, and then you got to transcribe the interviews, and then and Mickey pretty much opened his whole life to me, which was really cool.
Really,
the best thing that he gave me was for chapter 5, which is called 1971. He has a book, or he has several books, but this was the best one. His first year in the business, where he wrote down his opponent, whether he won or lost, how much money he made, how much gas it took to get there, if he had to pay for a hotel. I mean, if you had a car repair or what. So the whole year was in such detail that it was fantastic. And it really was an eye opener to what it really means to be a professional wrestler.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing. So, Mickey, how did you get into the business?
Okay, I'll tell you. As a kid growing up, 8, 9 years old, I'm from Detroit. And on Saturday mornings, there used to be black and white wrestling matches from Chicago on TV. And I was just mesmerized by it. I'd just sit there on the couch, and it just took me to a different place. And I just was amazed at all these guys and their athletics. I'm talking about in the day of like Angelo Poffo and Gorgeous George and guys of that, Killer Kowalski, Haystacks Calhoun, and I was just fascinated by it. So long story short, growing up and so forth, going through all my years, I just still had this fascination to be a professional wrestler. And there was a wrestler named Louis Klein, an old-timer from the Detroit area, who had a wrestling school in Allen Park, Michigan. And after I did I did a military commitment and all that sort of stuff, I came and I went to a school, and he told me, well, kid, you should go to college. I says, I'm not going to college. I want to be a pro wrestler. So he said it's $300 for a course, which nowadays it'd probably be $10,000 to go to a wrestling school. But long story short, I trained for 6 hard months. I'd go there 5 to 7 days a week and just learn the craft. And after 6 months, they got me a match for the Sheik, working a television match. They used to do the TV tapings after Cobo Hall out in Walled Lake, Michigan, in a real small studio. And I got my first match, and it was against Classy Freddie Blassie. And that's how I started the whole thing. And probably 4 months into the business, the Sheik, who owned the promotion and was the promoter, asked me if I wanted to go on the road full time. And of course I said, yeah. And it started a career. So it actually started in 1970.
Wow. Now, were you you were fairly athletic? Were there any other sports that you played?
Oh, high school, I played baseball and football, and they didn't have amateur wrestling. And I went to South Lake High School, St. Clair Shores, Michigan, and the only wrestling we did was off-season conditioning for football. That was the only amateur type wrestling we did. But I was pretty decent in football and baseball in high school.
Okay. Yeah, I'm always fascinated by the wrestlers because I personally feel that they're the best athletes in the world because they got to wrestle 300 some odd days a year. They don't get an off season, So I always wonder, I'm like, I wonder what other sports that they would have been good at if they did play.
Yeah. There was I do a podcast with Don Morocco, and Don Morocco, we've been friends for 40 plus years. He was a great high school football player. He was like all state in Oahu, and he wrestled. He never played no baseball. He wasn't a ball player, but he was a great wrestler. And there was most of you guys like Murdoch and Terry Funk and them guys, they all went to like West Texas College, and they all
Right. I know.
Bobby Duncan, they all came from football backgrounds. They all, Kurt Henning, the guys out of Minneapolis, they all had football backgrounds.
Tito, I think Tito went there too.
Yeah, Tito played, I think he might have played for the Kansas City Chiefs for a weekend or something, maybe for a month, maybe. But he did say he was in the camp. Yeah.
Now, Tim, what is your background?
Well, I started watching wrestling as a 10-year-old, about the time Mickey was starting, and when I went to college, I studied journalism, and so I've been a journalist my whole career, journalist or a public relations person, and this is my first book.
Okay. Yeah. So, what was it a daunting task for you to take on?
Not particularly daunting. I mean, it's when you look at want to boil a person's life into something manageable, interesting to read. I mean, it's a big deal, but it was fun because it was Mickey, and Mickey's a good dude, so it was fun to do.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing that. I mean, it takes me 3 hours to formulate a Facebook post, let alone write a 400-page book.
This is not a 400-page book. No. It's only about 100 pages, but it wasn't daunting, but it was a lot of work, and it was fun work, so it didn't seem hard, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I can see
that. Tim had a background in NASCAR also. He wrote for NASCAR publication. He's real modest, but he did work for NASCAR for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There was I worked for a PR agency in the Detroit area that helped a NASCAR team. So I worked for them for about 4 years.
Okay. Well, that's pretty exciting.
That was probably the most fun job I ever had.
Yeah. No, I could see that. Let's see. Somebody wants to know, what was it like working with the original Sheik?
Oh, well, I worked with the original Sheik, I don't know, 10 times probably. And when I first broke in, I was just cannon fodder, I was just the guy that got slammed 10 times in the camel clutch. But then later on, years later, in the very early 90s, I came back to Detroit, and him and I would work main events in the little the high schools or the armories, and he was still making a living doing it. So we'd have some bloodbaths, so that was cool. I had fun working with the Sheik. And actually, how working with him, I mean, he was a what you call a firm worker. He would lock up firm, and he would grab you. He'd be not stiff, but he was solid. He was solid. Just to say, he's a solid worker.
Okay. Who are some?
I actually met the Sheik myself and spent a weekend with him on a trip, which this was while I was in college, and that was quite an experience, I must say. And then that sort of continued my interest in wrestling because I was always a Sheik fan as a kid. Yeah, and so to be able to spend a weekend with him on a tour was quite an experience.
Now, Tim, where did you grow up? What part of the country?
Right about the same place Mickey did. I grew up in Harper Woods, Michigan, which is right next door to St. Clair Shores.
Okay.
Suburbs of Detroit. They're both suburbs of Detroit.
Oh, okay. All right. So Tim, what promotion would you have watched on television growing up?
The Sheik's Big Time Wrestling.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I grew up with the WWF Superstars of Wrestling era.
Yeah. You a East Coaster?
Yeah, the New York area. So, Mickey, would you have worked with anyone that I would have known from the WWF at all?
If you named a name, I work with them. Just throw a name out there. Let's see what happens. Just go ahead. Anybody.
Gorilla Monsoon.
You know what? I worked on shows in Los Angeles when Gorilla would fly in from New York, but I never worked against him. So you got me right off the bat.
How about George Animal Steel?
Who?
George the Animal Steel? He's from
Oh
Detroit, right?
God. Well, George the Animal Steel is from Madison Heights, Michigan. I mean, him and I would make road trips together. So
Oh,
we
really?
worked. Yeah, we worked. Well, he was wrestling as the student when he was in Detroit.
Oh,
He was
oh, right.
Gary Hart was the manager, and I worked with George 10 times probably.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mickey, tell him about the time that you thought you were going to have to face George in your first Kobo show,
Well,
and then he didn't show up.
Cobo Hall was the big show in Detroit. It was the big Madison Square Garden type gimmick, right? And my first match in Cobo was in right before Christmas, 1970. So I walk in the arena. I'm all pumped because this is where I used to go as a fan to watch the wrestle matches. And a fan, I got my bag. They didn't know who. Well, they did know who I was because they had seen me on TV, and he wanted me to autograph something. I looked at the card, and it said Mickey Doyle versus George the Animal Steel, the student. I think he was still the student, and I thought, oh well, I'm getting slaughtered tonight. So I go in the dressing room, and the booker comes. The guy named Jack Kane was the booker, and he goes, "Well, you're working with this guy Billy Coleman tonight. Beat him with a spinning toe hold." And I was like, "Oh, no problem," you know. So that was cool that I went over. I didn't work with George.
Yeah. No, that is pretty cool. What about let's see, Andre? How about Andre the Giant?
Yeah, I worked in battle royals, but never a single. But I did. California had yearly battle royals in January, the big LA battle royal, and Andre was always there, and I was in the match. I took the splash from Andre in what was it, 1984, and they carried me out they carried me out from taking the
Stretchered him
splash.
out.
But I did. Here's the thing about Andre. I was working in Hawaii in the late 70s, and my son Brett was 3 years old at the time, and we all stayed at the same motel, the Ambassador Hotel in Oahu. And Andre was there for about 3 weeks. And every morning we go down to the pool. Andre be in the pool playing with my son Brett, showing him how to swim, and just that's my memory of Andre as a good man, a really good man outside of the ring.
That's incredible. I mean, I always wonder how big is he when you're standing next to him?
His hands, and I remember he used to wear cowboy boots. And I remember the first time I met him, and I forget where I met him because you'd work a promotion, and Andre would be there at some point. You were there. He would always come in for a week or whatever. But I remember looking at him taking off his cowboy boots, and I was just amazed because it looked like two normal shoes together, And his hands, he would shake your hand real, he would do a firm handshake, but he could have killed you. But his hands was just massive, and just a massive man, but he was very private too. He didn't just talk to everybody, he wasn't trusting, you know what I mean? There was people always looking at him because he was different looking, and he was always kind of on the protective side. But he, in my book, he was a good man, a really good man.
There's a picture of the two of them together in the book, oddly enough.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm picturing him.
Mickey's about what, 5'10"?
Well, back then I was almost 6 foot, but now
All right, well, you've shrunk. So to see the difference between Mickey then and Andre is pretty stark.
Yeah.
I'm picturing him like standing up in the deep end.
Yeah, he was. You could see him. You could see him in the deep end. That's for sure.
That's incredible. Well, that must have been a heck of an experience.
The whole wrestling in general was. Back when I wrestled, there was territories. There was probably 30 plus territories across the United States. And if you failed in one territory, you could make a phone call and you could be the next territory in 2 days or something like that. You always had a chance to make it. Then when wrestling popped in the mid 80s and Vince McMahon, he basically took all the talent from the promotions and they had a fold. It actually put a lot of guys out of work. It made guys money, but it also put guys out of work. But in retrospect, I was just fortunate to have caught my dream and to have done that, lived the life on the road and made a lot of friends and still got some good friends. Like I said, Don Morocco, him and I have always kept in touch and we do a show together, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It is awesome. That's cool. If you got a few friends at the end, that's a good thing. But the pro wrestling business was, it was cool. It was a cool gig.
So I've always wondered what it was like back then trying to get trying to get jobs in different promotions, because it's not like now where someone could just text you on a cell phone, right? Like, did you have answering machine? Like, how did people get in touch with each other back then?
I'll tell you how it worked for me. the promoters or the booker usually, okay, I worked in Detroit for a year from 70 to 71. Then they sent me to Tampa to work for a promotion promoted by a guy named Eddie Graham, an old famous wrestler, one of the Jerry
Yep.
Graham, Eddie Graham, the Graham brothers. And what they did is the booker, Jack Kane, called the Louis Tilley was the booker in Tampa. And he goes, Louis, I got a young guy here. He's been with us a year, but he needs some more experience. And, just packed up the car and drove to Tampa, drove all night and started a couple days later and then learned from there. Then Tampa, I learned a lot of amateur type wrestling because there's a lot of amateur there, a lot of shooters there. Hiro Matsuda and the Briscoes on and on. Tampa was a badass territory. So then a guy named Mike Boyette had just left Tampa and he went to Mobile, and him and I looked a lot alike. So I'd been in Tampa about 8 months, and Louis Tilley goes, well, it's time to move on, kid, but I'm going to make a call for you and try to set up something. So he calls the booker, Lee Fields, in Mobile and said, I got a guy down here that looks just like Mike Boyette. Well, they put us together. We became the California Hippies, and that was my best run. We worked together for 2 to 3 years. We had the belts. We win the belt, we lose the belt, but we made decent money. That's the only place I ever made decent money, and it kind of works like that. And then when you get a bit of a name, you can make your own phone call then. Like we were doing good in Mobile, really good. And then we wanted to go somewhere else, so we called Kansas City, who Boyette used to work with Harley Race with. Harley, he worked for Gagne, and Harley and all the Minnesota guys and Mike Boyette worked for Gagne. So he called Harley and said, hey, me and my partner, we could be good heels for you. And they brought us in there and they gave us the belts. And it just kind of works like that. You get, at first, the booker will make the calls for you. Then you get a bit of a name and you can make your own calls to the different promotions. But it's all over the telephone. There was no...
they didn't even have answering machines in those days.
They didn't even. I don't know if they had answer machines. I don't even know, truthfully.
I mean, secretaries. But one of the things that that we talk about in the book is a lot of the missed opportunities that Mickey had along the way. Boyette, they could have been a really hot tag. Didn't Dory Funk want you to go to Amarillo?
Yeah.
But Boyette didn't want to leave his girlfriend or his wife, so they didn't get to go to Amarillo and work with the Funks.
It's that's the thing, Eddie, about the business. It's if you got a family and you got children or anything like that, boy, it's a hard deal because you're never home, and there's always the girls hanging around after the matches. And even if you're not messing around with the girls, you got a wife that's going to think you're messing around. It just comes with the territory. It's a hard road. If you got a family, it's never going to work, truthfully, unless you got a really different type of wife. It's a hard thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the guys today are probably just, maybe having families a lot later in life, right? The guys that are wrestling today, I would imagine.
Well, you see a lot of them are with, like, a lot of the guy wrestlers are with girl wrestlers.
All right.
Which is smart because everybody, you know what the business then. So I think that's kind of where it's headed towards, and there's so many girl wrestlers now, and it seems like every one of them is attractive, the boys are attracted to them and vice versa. Everybody's a pretty body today wrestling. They're all buffed and they're all good looking, and it's it's like a
deal.
movie.
So Tim, what was what was one of the most interesting things that you learned about Mickey while you were writing this book?
That just because you're on TV, you weren't rich.
You're not
And I'll tell you what.
When you're a kid or a wrestling fan, you think, oh, because they're on TV, they must be rich. But you find out they made $25 for being on TV and not $200, not $3,000. I mean, so it was an interesting thing, and also to find out that he had success in Mobile, Alabama, that he wrestled Andre the Giant, that he wrestled Freddie Blassie, and some of the people that are legends. I mean, there's a whole chapter about the legends that he wrestled.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole list of them, and he talks about them. And then there's a whole chapter on the cool buildings that he wrestled in. So, I mean, to learn that there was more to Mickey Doyle than just what I saw on TV in Detroit was a wide awakening.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the things that when I started doing this show with Kenny Casanova, was I was always under the impression if you wrote one book, that it was kind of like, having a one-hit wonder on the radio where that's it. Like you could just live the rest of your life without ever having to work again.
We'll see.
Well, let's put it this way: the book's been out 2-3 days so far. I've made $75,
All right,
which I think is pretty good actually, because I don't expect them to make dime one.
So talk about the. I know Kenny hates when I ask these questions, but what is the self-publishing process like?
It's so easy.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the writing of it's the most difficult part. Amazon, and I'm sure there are other places that do it also. Kenny gave me some ideas, but I decided to go with Amazon, and the process is very simple, really. I mean, you have to kind of go through and do some trial and error stuff, and then it's really not that difficult to get it to that stage. Once you've got it written, you can
now,
you can work.
how about as far as getting pictures for the book? Did you have to go out and purchase those, or were you allowed to use any picture that Mickey already had?
Anything Mickey gave me, I could just use because it was his.
Yep.
There's another guy, Dave Drayson, Supermodel Dave Drayson, who's also Dave Brzezinski, who's local to Detroit, and he's sort of a friend of mine now. He was a photographer for the Chic back when he was young person, and he has a huge selection of pictures. I didn't use that. The cover picture for the book is Dave's, and there's another picture that we used that Dave took of you with Crusher Cortez in Kobo. But most of the pictures came from Mickey's collection, like him with John Tolos in California, him with Andre the Giant, him with Bobo Brazil, him with with Luis Martinez. So there's a lot of cool pictures, and most of them came from Mickey's collection.
Was John Tolos Earthquake?
No, that's John Tenta.
Oh, John Tenta. That's right. Yeah.
John Tolos was part of the Tolos brothers, who were great in Madison Square Gardens in the early '60s, late '50s, early '60s.
Yep.
But Chris ended up staying mostly in the Detroit area, and John went out west and had great success against Freddie Blassie and some of those guys.
Okay. Yeah. What was Freddie Blassie like as a person? He seemed like a really creative guy. Off the top of his head, like really witty.
I can just tell you my own personal being with him. First of all, he was really clever. His interviews, I mean, he was the guy that would come out and with the nail file, he's filing his teeth, because he always, his gimmick was biting your forehead. But just a quick, like I said, that was my first match was against Freddie Blassie, and he was, the first match you're nervous, and he gave me a headlock, or he had me take a headlock on him, and so forth. But then about 5 months later, they sent me and a guy named Killer Brooks to do some New York tapes, for WWF back in the day. And I had to work with Freddie Blassie that night in a TV tape. And I get in the ring, and the referee comes over to me, and he goes, Freddie said he's got to beat you real quick, kid, and he's sorry. He knows this is your first night on TV here, but no hard feelings. But that was him. That was classy. He remembered me from having my first match with him 6 months prior, but he told the ref that, he's got to squash me real quick because he's coming back with Pedro in the Garden, actually. That was the deal. He was working against Pedro, had the belt then. So that was my memory of Freddie. Just a pretty nice man. Pretty cool dude.
All right, let's see. Let's get some we got a bunch of questions coming in, so let's try to get to some fan questions here. Let's see. Somebody wants to know, what was the process in writing the book? Was it face-to-face or a bunch of phone calls?
The first thing we did was we had a couple of long interview sessions that I recorded. Yeah. And then I followed up with some phone calls. And then, Mickey he showed me those books of his and his photo albums and his scrapbooks. Then I did interviews with people like Morocco and with Sabu and Peter B. Beautiful up north, who was actually responsible for the name of the book. Who else? Flying Fred Curry. I spoke to him. So it was interviews with, Mickey's contemporaries as well as with him.
Okay. Let's see. Next question here. I see Sabu wrote one of the forwards for the book. What's the connection there?
Well,
you can tell that story there, Mick.
Well, Sabu, and I go back to when he was probably 18 years old. He's the Sheik's nephew. And I was on the road for, 15 years. And I came back home to Detroit. and I started working shows again. The Sheik was running little promotions then, and I'd work for him. And Sabu was just breaking in, and Sabu had some of his first matches um, against me. So we've been. I talked to Sabu 2 weeks ago. He's living in Las Vegas now, and he's got the gal Melissa Coates doing the gimmick with him. She's the genie, and they're still working. But to tell you the truth, Melissa's under the weather right now. So say a prayer for Melissa. But he's still hanging and banging, making a living, on the road. The COVID has obviously hurt everybody as far as the pro wrestling goes, but
Yeah.
he still does virtual things. I believe he's making money doing virtual things.
Okay. Yeah, and I can definitely see the COVID has probably hurt the business a lot, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mickey, what do you think of pro wrestling today?
Well, it's totally different from back in my day, but I respect it's a whole different thing, but that's the way that they do it now. It's not like back when we would have matches that went 30 minutes and you tell a story. Pro wrestling now today is just constant boom, 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 boom. And everybody looks like a bodybuilder, the girls and the guys. They all are in phenomenal shape. So I respect their look. I respect what they do. I just don't agree maybe with the way matches go, but as far as that's the way it is. So that's the way people are being programmed now to watch it. The viewers are being programmed to watch pro wrestling in today's format. As back in our day, they were programmed to watch it in our format. Now it's the different format. I respect both ways, but I still like my old, the way I did it back in the day.
I've heard a lot of people talk about telling a story in the ring.
Yeah.
Maybe there's people out there listening that, not sure what exactly does that mean?
Okay, here's what it means. Like, okay, you start a match. So I'm the good guy, and Tim say, Eddie, you're the bad guy. So I say, I'm the good guy, grab a headlock on you. I'll do a couple of nice, beautiful moves, take you over. You get frustrated after 2-3 minutes, and maybe you get me in the ropes and give me a knee and start roughing me up. Okay, and here's where he's telling the story now. I did some good moves that gave you a reason to be pissed off at me, to do some evil moves. So you're beating me up, and I'm selling. I'm trying to get up, but you maybe pull my hair and give me a knee to the face or a uppercut to the face, and I'm selling. I'm crawling around. I keep fighting to get back into the match, fighting. All of a sudden, looks like I'm gonna. And then you stop me one more time, and now the people are going, "Go, Mickey, go!" If you're hoping that's what they say.
Yeah.
Usually they
If they don't, you're in trouble.
I could tell a good story, and they're going, "Go, Mickey, go!" Then finally, say we win 15, 16 minutes. It's time for my big comeback. You beat the hell out of me, and now I slowly, maybe I'm down on my knees and I hit you with a punch in the stomach. You register, but you're still coming at me, so I hit you with another punch in the stomach. And this is telling the story. We're telling the story about good versus evil. The bad guy is beating up the good guy. The good guy's trying to make that comeback. And finally, I get that big comeback, and you fly all over the ring for me. A good heel will fly all over for his baby face, make him look like $1 million. We're both trying to make each other look like $1 million. We're telling the fans a story, and I hope I explained that right.
Yeah,
but tell
that's
the
awesome.
Story. Yeah.
That's
the other part that is that in the older days, a heel or even a babyface would work on a particular body part. Like Ric Flair would work on somebody's legs because he wanted to put the figure 4 on. So everybody said, "Oh, Flair's getting him ready for the figure 4." And then when the guy he'd try to put it on, and the guy would kick out of it for a couple of times before he ever got a chance to latch it on. So all these things were designed to excite the crowd, get the crowd ready for the ending.
Telling a story, right?
No, that's all. That's awesome. Let's see here. Pedro Morales, Ernie Ladd, the Bearman. Did you ever work with any of those guys?
Yeah. I got drunk with Pedro out in San Francisco. Ernie Ladd. I'll tell you my Ernie Ladd stories. I was with Ernie in L.A., in Detroit, and Buffalo. And anytime Ernie would come to town, he never liked to drive or get a rental. So I would always pick up Ernie, and Ernie would come over to the house or the apartment and that sort of thing. And every town we go to, he usually played football in one of the stadiums. So if we're like out west, we go by the old where the San Diego Chargers used to play. I can't think of the stadium now, but he'd always have to get a picture of it. We go to the Coliseum in LA. He'd always have to get out of the car, take a picture of it. Tiger Stadium in Detroit. Buffalo, Cleveland, the old Cleveland Brown Stadium. Ernie, that was Ernie. You'd always get a picture of the stadiums he played. That's my memory with him. And then the bear man, Dave McKegney, I worked with him. He used to run London, Ontario, in St. Catharines and all that. And Dave was a good guy because Dave would pay off fair on a good show in London Gardens. He'd give you $150 or $200. He was fair. I had nothing but good things to say about Dave McKegney and his stepdaughter Rachel. Rachel was a hot tamale. That's all. That's what good people.
I got to know the bear man when I was on my little weekend with the Sheik, because while we were there, we went to Dave's cabin in the middle of the woods. And there was a big barbecue there with all the wrestlers and some friends of the family. And it was quite fun.
Good guy.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Let's see. Javier wants to say that he's going to be buying the book on the Kindle edition tomorrow. And to learn more about Irish Mickey Doyle, congrats on the book.
Thanks
Thank you.
Brother. Thank you, Javier.
I think you'll enjoy it. It goes it starts. The first chapter is about his last match, which was kind of fun. And then it goes into his childhood and goes through training and his first year in the business, and then the hippie bit, and then going to Japan and going to L.A. and Hawaii, and it goes basically his whole life. It hits the high points.
And working in the mental hospital too. That's good.
That's right.
That's probably the best story in the book, the mental hospital.
And that's where he met his first wife.
All right.
What does that have to tell you?
That's ironic. Yeah. Let's see. Hold on. We got one for Tim. Tim, were you surprised at how easy Amazon is and today's technology helping new authors?
Absolutely. I was. I had never done it before, and once I got into it and understood how the thing worked. I think I had one call to technical support, and after I talked to that lady for a while, everything kind of worked out.
Now, how did you get introduced to Mickey originally? How'd that happen?
I had just become friends with Dave Brzezinski, Supermouth Dave Drayson. Okay. And he and I are both wine enthusiasts. He much more than me. But so he says, "Hey, remember that Denny Cass had passed away?" And he was the last of the Kangaroos that wrestle as a team, the Kangaroos. Mickey was one for a while. But anyway, so Dave said, let's go to this funeral home. It was in Dearborn. I happened to be working in Dearborn. That was during the NASCAR days. And so went to the funeral. I saw this guy over in the corner, and he looked familiar. And I asked Dave, I go, "Is that Irish Mickey Doyle over there?" He goes, "Yeah." So I went over and introduced myself. We talked for a little while. And then after that, we just kept in touch on Facebook, and one thing led to another.
That's pretty cool. Did Kenny? Did you talk to Kenny Casanova at all? Any tips from him?
Well, only when I was getting ready to publish, because he was one of the people that I was told that knows how to do that sort of thing. Right. He gave me some ideas, and he's actually read my manuscript before it got published. So I was kind of hoping he'd be on the show so he could say how great.
Hopefully, he pointed you in the right direction.
He was great, and he seemed to enjoy the book, which pleased me even more.
He told me that he texted me this morning, told me that he's in Facebook jail right now.
Oh, he is.
Yeah. Who knows what he was doing, but
Eddie, what city are you in, Eddie?
I'm in Boston.
Oh, you're in Boston. Wow.
Yeah.
Red Sox.
You ever wrestle at the Garden?
No, I didn't. And I wish, one of my bucket lists, I never worked the Boston Garden or the Madison Square Garden. I never did. And
what about the Maple Leaf Gardens?
Yeah, I worked for the Tunnies. Yeah, I worked in
Maple really?
Leaf. Yeah.
That was always one of my favorite arenas to watch wrestling in.
Because of that ramp?
Yes, because of the ramp. Yes, the ramp.
Yeah.
Wait. So what was that like wrestling there with that ramp? Did that pose a challenge at all?
Well, you could take a bump over. You could take a flying or a hip toss right over the top rope and not kill yourself. You'd land on a hardwood thing. The thing about Maple Leaf Garden, that was a boxing ring, and that ring was so hard for bumps. It was just a lot of old time arenas would use boxing rings. Like Cincinnati Gardens was a boxing ring. Cobo Hall was a boxing ring too, but it wasn't as bad as some of the other boxing rings. But that's my memory of the Maple Leaf Garden was the boxing ring. working in there.
All right, that's pretty cool. Let's see. Here's what. Did Mickey ever wrestle a bear?
You know what? When I was the hippie down in Montgomery, Alabama, the guy Nick Roberts brought the wrestling bear in there one night, and the crowd, we were the heels, and the crowd had to choose who they wanted to wrestle the bear out of the bad guys. And my partner Boyette got elected by the crowd, so he had to wrestle the bear. And that bear got on top of him and rode him, and he couldn't do a thing. You know, Boyette was underneath. He was like, help, help.
That's
I
crazy.
bet he needed a shower big time after that.
What kind of bear was it?
It was just a big black bear, declawed.
How about
And it had a muzzle. It had a
teeth?
muzzle
Oh, it had the
on.
muzzle on.
But it wasn't actually. That's what this guy the Bear Man, Dave McKigney, had the wrestling bears also.
Right.
And they were like their pets. I mean, they were their dogs and everything. That was that type of thought train was like their own pet thing, and they did their best to keep them fairly tame. But
Did Dave's bear get a beer after the match?
Dave's bear killed his wife.
Oh my God!
I know.
Right, I do remember that. I did hear that.
That's a sad story, but he killed his wife.
I was I was having a 2 a.m. YouTube rabbit hole night where I was watching videos of bears attacking humans.
Yeah.
Man, I would not want to wrestle a bear.
Oh,
Those are declawed and got a muzzle. You're only just dealing with a lot of girth.
I guess, but what if the muzzle falls off?
Then you're screwed.
But those, bears in real life, like my wife and I we live up in the woods in the UP. I'm in Detroit right now, and we got a lot of black bears that come around our house. They don't want no part of humans if they're not looking for trouble unless when they come out of hibernation, usually in May, and they got their babies. That's when the mamas are going to get pissed off at you.
Right.
But I like the bears, I respect the bears. Let me put it that way.
I mean, absolutely.
But they're not looking for human contact.
Hold on, let's see. Did Mickey end up working with Don Morocco? Did he ever have any work with Mr. Fuji? Any Fuji ribs?
Oh my God!
Yeah,
this guy must have read the book.
That's funny because, well, like I said, Morocco and I, we've been friends for 100 years, maybe not that long, but and we worked a lot of times out west, and we worked partners in Hawaii. But Fuji, I was in San Francisco promotion with Fuji and also in Hawaii with Fuji. And I remember one night, we used to go on the weekends. They'd fly us from Oahu they'd fly us to Maui and then to the Big Island of Hawaii. And Fuji and me and Morocco, we always would be in the same hotel. And there was a guy named Tor Kamada, who was a big Japanese wrestler. He was a Hawaiian guy doing a Japanese gimmick. And him and Fuji were partners. And he would snore at night. So Fuji would come down to our room, 2 a.m., at least twice a week. We go in that room. Fuji would take a big wad of toilet paper with water on it and just stuff it in his mouth. And then we'd run out of the room. And that was it. Fuji was always pulling ribs. I mean, that was a mild rib. He would do some pretty devious ribs too. But the thing about Fuji, I mean, I got to work with Fuji too. He was a great guy to work with because he would just fly all over the ring for you. He would he loved to bump, and he would take big crazy bumps. And remember when Fuji and Morocco did Fuji Vice?
Oh
yes, yeah. That was hysterical.
That was priceless. That was priceless stuff. It was so hysterical. Yeah. That Fuji was.
No, they were Fuji and Morocco.
Mickey,
they were great.
Tell them about the time that you were in a lumberjack match and Fuji exposed you to the world.
That was great. That was on Maui. So I did my match, and then there was a lumberjack match, but I didn't take a shower yet. So I'll tell you the crew that was there. That was Buddy Rose, Big John Studd, Chris Markoff, John Tolis, Morocco Fuji, myself, Mark Lewin, Furpo, and King Curtis Kayakawa. That was a hell of a crew. So we do the lumberjack, and it's Tolis against Fuji. And Fuji, I knew Fuji did this on purpose. He told us to throw him out of the ring on my side. He comes right over. I didn't have nothing on, just my sweats. And he just pulled my whole pants down. Everything was just bouncing around. And I just sold it, though. I didn't try to grab my pants and pull it up. I just did a 360, let everybody see me. Then I pulled my pants up. But Fuji got me, but it was funny. So, Fuji was a great ribber. He was a great ribber and great
No, that's
worker,
great.
great manager.
Now, did you ever get a chance to work with guys like Mean Gene or Bobby the Brain,
You know, I
or know them at all?
back in the day, the Chic days, I remember Bobby Heenan would come up from Indianapolis, and this was before he was a manager. He was wrestling. He was actually
Yep.
wrestling shows, and he was actually Bobby Heenan. Remember when he was managing? He'd take big bumps. He was one of the best bumpers in the business. He was so coordinated.
He was a great wrestler. I saw him wrestle a couple times, and he was really, really a good worker.
He could go. But he made more money managing, so he's just looking to make a buck.
Yeah.
But Mean Gene, I didn't know personally. Bobby Heenan, I knew slightly, and worked on some shows with him. But
yep. How about Captain Lou Albano?
My first encounter with Captain Lou, I'll tell you, I got a memory of that too. The same time that they sent Killer Brooks and me to do the jobs in New York, the first match was at the Philadelphia Arena. It was me and one of the local New York guys against Crazy Luke Graham and Tarzan Tyler. They had the tag team belts then. This is like 1971. And Captain Lou was their manager, right? So we're in the ring, and the two guys come out, and Captain Lou's leading, and he's got a big, what do they call that? A cat chain, a big long cat chain with keys and spikes on it. He's swinging it around at the crowd. And the majority of the crowd was Puerto Rican fans. And I could see the knives coming out. And I said to the guy I was working with, I said, get ready. I said, get ready. They're coming in the ring. You know, I figured everybody's going to be in the ring in a minute with their knives, and it's going to be a big bloodbath. And, you know, nothing happened. But that was my first memory of Captain Lou. And that was a good memory, because I thought it was going to all hit the fan that night, and it didn't. But he got the crowd going completely insane, just swinging a cat chain around over his head. So, yeah.
No, that's great. So, Tim, when you're going
there were some times when Mickey got into situations where the fans encroached the ring.
Oh, well, yeah,
especially down in Alabama.
Yeah, I had lawsuits. You know, down south, the people there's no pro sports back in the day. Then it was just college football. And pro wrestling was like their baseball or their football. You know, that was like going to church on Sunday, pro wrestling, and they believed it. I mean, if you were a bad guy down there, you had to really watch your back. They would get you in one way or another. And I've had my window shot out. I had a car window shot out. I had a van. They shot those out. And I remember the big night in Montgomery where we got into it. The fans and the police got involved, and the police maced me, and I had to go to court. You know, I had a lawsuit from a policeman, and it was crazy. Down south, I got stabbed probably 2 to 3 times from fans. You know, just slashing at you from the crowd. It was wild times. Yeah.
So, Tim, when you were gathering all your information from Mickey and asking him a bunch of questions, how do you decide, what to leave out of the book? Who makes that decision?
My decision. I mean, I tried to leave in what I thought was the most interesting, that kind of told Mickey's story more, most accurately and most entertainingly and whatever. I mean, because Mickey has stories forever, and the book could have been 400 pages long, right. But I wanted it to be a quick read. I wanted it to be entertaining, and I wanted it to be, not like you have to read the Bible, So I wanted, like Mick Foley's book, it's fantastic. It's this thick. It's an investment. I mean, people are reading this one, as far as I can tell, like in an evening. Or maybe 2 evenings. It's not that hard of a read, and they're going to be entertained, and they're going to put it down and say that was really fun to read. So I used just about everything we talked about at one point or another.
Okay. Now, are you guys going to be going to any of the conventions when they finally get back to promote the book at all?
You got me, brother. It'd be cool. I mean, that'd be nice, try to be involved in something like that, Comic Con or something like that. But don't they got to call you, or do you got to get your own publicity on that? I don't even know how that works, to be honest.
Oh, I think you just get a table or something like that. I think that's what
you rent tables.
Oh yeah. Well, I've done that.
I mean, who knows when that's going to happen? When that'll even
Yeah,
be a
right.
Well,
fan
they
again.
they do fan fests here in Detroit, which I would easily buy a table for and
Yep.
do that and call Mickey and make him come down for it. But we've one of the local independent promoters asked me to come and do a book signing later this month, but I'm not going to have enough books in my hands to do it by then. So maybe later in the year or early next year, I'll do that.
Oh, because with Amazon that they print when bought. Is that how it works?
They print on demand. So like I put in for 10 books, my first batch, just to see how they're going to come out, and I won't get those until like November 20th or something.
Okay.
But hell, they cost more to ship than they cost to print. So
Oh, really?
I'm being judicious on the ones that I spend. It turns out that a lot of people want them autographed, so I'm going to at some point have to get a bigger stock and have Mickey come in and do some signings and so then and sell them that way. But it's it's only been out for a couple of days, so you learn as you go.
Right. Yeah, I'm a big fan of having all the biographies I have autographed. So you gotta have that signature.
A lot of the ones that I have that I've read, the guys are dead, so it'll be kind of difficult to get Dick the Bruiser's autograph right now, or
I know,
or Gorgeous George or somebody like that.
Yeah, no, that is unfortunate. So what are you doing to promote the book other than stuff like interviews like this?
So right now, I'm just focusing on Facebook.
Yep.
And there's like 5 or 6 wrestling pages that I'm a member of, and I sent stuff to like all of them, and I think most of them put it on. And Dave Drayson, Dave Brzezinski, who I talked about before, he's putting it on some wrestling forums and websites that he contributes to. And a local wrestling historian, Mark Bujan, is he operates one or two or three of the Facebook pages. He's going to write a review for Slam Wrestling, which is a Canadian website. So I'm just basically letting it go by word of mouth, see what happens.
Okay. Let's see. What do you want readers to take away from the book?
Personally, I want people to remember Irish Mickey Doyle as a great journeyman wrestler from back in the day. 2, I want them to understand how wrestling operated back in those days, and that it wasn't all glamorous, and it was fun. Mickey, what do you want to get?
Yeah, just like you said, people see you on TV and they think, "Wow, this guy's making a great living and in that life," but it's so hard. I mean, I love it. I do it again, but it was a hard ride every night in the car and trying to make a marriage work and so on and so forth. It's mentally draining, but I would take the ride all over again just because it was my dream. But just be behind the scenes. You're going to see behind the scenes, and you're going to see some of the crazy what happened to me from the wrestling in physical ways and relationship ways and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, will there be an audiobook version?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, the first thing I was able to do, I did the Kindle first, and then at the same time I did the paperback. So there hasn't been a clamoring for an audiobook. That would mean I'd have to read it all again.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that I saw that I thought was really cool was I was listening to an interview with David Goggins. He's like the guy that runs like 100 miles without stopping.
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
he said he did an audio version of his book, and I guess the way they did it was, the person that they hired would read, do the reading of the book, and then he would jump in himself and describe what was happening at that one about what they were talking about, which I thought was kind of cool, like a cool way to do an audiobook.
That is cool. Yeah, you could experience what he was experiencing.
Right. Yeah, it was kind of interesting.
That's
if we were to do that, I would like read the parts that I wrote,
right,
and then have Mickey read his quotes.
Yeah, right.
But
yeah,
I don't think there's going to be a big clamoring for that. But if there is, at least a good idea to know that there's a way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this day and age, you need to be on every medium that you can. You want to meet your fans wherever they are. Whether it's an audiobook, a video book, a paperback book, the Kindle. There's like so many different ways to meet people, and everyone uses their own different channels to consume content. So unfortunately, like I was a stand-up comedian, and I love doing stand-up comedy, but I hate doing stand-up comedy now because now you have to be like a technical guru to figure out how to use like Photoshop, Adobe, so you can chop up your own videos, and it's like I gotta go back to doing school. I didn't want to do schoolwork. That's why I became a comedian. Now I gotta figure out how to be smart again.
And now you can't even perform anywhere.
Eddie, can I ask you a question? Can I
Yeah.
interview
Sure.
you for a second?
Yeah.
Do you know a guy named Avi Klein?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know Howard Collado, David Holliday, any of them guys?
I
New
don't
York
know
guys.
them. I don't know
Okay.
them. No.
But you know Avi.
Yeah, I talked to him last week about coming. Yeah, I know Avi. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the guy that runs the shows with Morocco.
Right.
He's
Yeah.
doing 8 shows a week. I'm on 3
It's
of them.
I told him, I said, you're the hardest working guy in the podcast business.
How does he do it?
I have no idea. And he's got the gimmick, he's got the get up on every show.
Oh.
He's he's a lot more charismatic than I could ever be on one of these things. But
I don't know. I swear to
good for
God,
him.
I don't know how he does. He sleeps 2 hours a night.
He's all I watch all the shows. I love watching them. So
Well, you've seen us on the shows. Then.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh.
I watched with the Morocco. I see the Paul Roma one he's got going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Green Room. Well, that's the big one we're promoting now. The Green Room every Saturday night, and that's insanity. It's like 3 hours. We just crazy characters.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
But yeah, no, that's awesome that that he's found a way to get himself out there and get you guys. Now, are you guys take a lot of questions from fans, right, on those shows?
He does
Yeah.
He will mention it, and we won't respond like we did tonight. I like responding to the fans like we did. This was cool. But he does that, and he'll just mention them, and then we're always in character or something. We're always like in a character mode, and it's
right.
It's fun. It's a challenge. It's a real challenge. Yeah.
Now, when's the last time you saw Don Morocco like in person?
Oh gosh, we did a what they call a Cauliflower Alley club get together, and that was in 1991. That's the last time we've seen each other physically. But we've talked on the telephone over all these years and kept in touch, which is amazing. And then
that's awesome. Yeah, we just did the ColleCon a few weeks ago where we did the benefit to help raise money for Cauliflower Alley because they weren't able to to have their convention this year. So we did the virtual me and Kenny did the virtual convention.
So I'm sure Brian Blair was on there, wasn't he?
Yeah, Brian Blair was on,
Yeah,
so
for sure.
He's the president of the CAC, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. We're all kind of in the same boat here. We're all in the same family.
It's just nice to for me personally, it's nice to be able to give back to the industry that I loved when I was a kid and, help the guys I was the best that I can,
But you got to get back on the road, right?
I'd like to be able to start doing stand-up at some point. If they just shut everything down in Massachusetts again, so.
That's a shame. I don't know how you guys do it. That's what I've always said to Avi. How do you keep coming up with stuff to make people laugh? That's amazing to me.
Does he do stand-up comedy?
He did stand-up comedy too.
I know that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the guys I mentioned, Holiday and
yeah, I know. Well, I know Avi just from the podcast, and from when we did the first COVID con that we did.
Well, he's an actual playwright. He made his money working for like Lionsgate and those companies like that, and then he did stop, and he actually wrestled for 8 years.
Wow, good for him.
And he was a professional bodybuilder. I mean, the guy's done a lot of things.
That's unbelievable.
He's an interesting dude, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, that's all. I'm trying to get him to come on our show. So one night
that'd be cool.
Because I told him like you got to come on and try to promote some stuff.
You should come on our shows. I mean, you should be part of.
I would love to. Yeah, definitely get some cross promotion going. So, all right. So, listen. So, the book. Where can we find the book? Where can people find the book?
If you go to Amazon Books, the easiest way to find it is to search my name, Tim Keenan,
Okay.
and it should bring it right up. And then you have a choice of Kindle for $5 or paperback for $7.
Okay. And the autograph copies, will those be coming on in the future?
At some point, we'll get around to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll still be in town. You said November the 20th or something like that?
Yeah, but that's going to be just a minor shipment. At some point, we'll get together and do a bigger deal.
Yeah. Okay. We will.
Yep. And Mickey, what's the show? Your show, The Green Room? Where can people tune into that?
Okay, that's 11 o'clock Eastern time. It's on if you go to Avi Klein's Facebook page, it streams, or like Don Morocco's Facebook, or Roma or Bill DeMont's, all the guys that are involved, Del Wilkes. It's all streaming on their Facebook, and it's also on Twitch, WWAB.
Okay.
And I'm not hip to Twitch, but I know it's out there.
And that's 11 p.m. Saturday nights, 11
every
p.m.
Saturday
Eastern.
night, and it's a wild ride. It really is. It'll take people away from the politics of the world. It'll make you laugh. It could make you pissed off, but it'll take you away. I guarantee that, because it's so off the wall. It's just so.
So it's you, Don Morocco, and Avi Klein.
No, that was about an hour ago. That was making waves. This one is with Avi, and it's myself, a guy named David Holliday, who is a stand-up comedian, Howard Collado, who's a stand-up comedian, in the COVID era like you, and a guy named Adam Sentif, who runs a wrestling podcast out of Texas, and we're all vying for the same job. We're all vying for Avi's job. And it's a crazy. He has us in situations where I'm being interviewed by different pretty ladies, and it's
what is it like? Is it like a what's my line? Is it like that?
It's just it's craziness. I'm like this old horny guy. I'm this old horny grandpa, and the girls are always kind of sending me a message, and I kind of take it the wrong way. And I just found out last week that I was interviewing my daughter. I just found out she was my daughter. She's 29 years old, and she had the papers, and she said, "Well, I'm your daughter, and you just flirted with me." So it's kind of like that. It's kind of a wild ride.
Sounds like an improv deal.
It's all improv. That's all
awesome.
Improv. It's exactly what it is. It's improv. It's like that whole Saturday Night Live type gimmick.
All right, cool. No, that does sound cool. All right, guys. Hey, listen. Thanks so much for coming on tonight. Definitely appreciate it, and we'll be looking forward to checking the book out.
Thank you, Eddie, for everything, and I wish you get back on the road, brother. Make your money.
All right, guys.
Thanks for having us on, and we'll get you an autographed copy at some point.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Mickey. We'll see you guys.
Thank you, Eddie.
All right, take care.
Tim, I'll talk to you.